Through you, Mr. Mayor, it is 5:30 p.m. and the live stream has commenced. You may begin your meeting.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. Good evening, council members, SLT, and residents. I see that we do indeed have quorum. I would call into session this public meeting under the Planning Act on Wednesday, July 12th at 5:30 p.m. As is usually the case, before we go any further, a member of council reads the land recognition statement, and tonight that job falls to me. We begin this meeting by acknowledging the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, and acknowledging reminds us that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendship of Indigenous people. Madam Clerk.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I do have some opening remarks. If you'd allow me a moment to share my screen. Public meeting under the Planning Act, Wednesday, July 12th, 2023 at 5:30 p.m. The town of Pelham is holding hybrid public meetings, and a hybrid meeting involves a mixture of in-person and remote attendance. Please note that no decisions have been made prior to this meeting. The Planning Department will be providing a presentation regarding the subject application. Public meeting is a formal public hearing requiring decorum. All comments are to be made through the chair. If you've pre-registered to speak virtually or are participating in person, you'll be given an opportunity to address council at the public portion. If you're live streaming and wish to submit a comment live, please email clerks@pelham.ca. Comments must be received during the public portion of the meeting. Inappropriate comments will also not be tolerated. If decorum is lost, the meeting may be recessed and persons asked to leave. To allow for an efficient meeting, each member of the public will be given an opportunity to speak to council during the public portion. Please note that all comments must be stated and received electronically. They form part of the public record and will be considered by planning staff when preparing their recommendation report for council's consideration. If you wish to receive a copy of the notice of decision, please contact the planner responsible for the application in writing as soon as possible. Contact information is on the following presentation. Through you, Mr. Mayor, that brings us to item number 3. I have a motion put forth by Councillor Olson that the agenda be amended to add item 5.3.1 to you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, any discussion on this motion? Not seeing any? Oh, all those in favor? Thank you. Any against? Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, the motion carries.
Thank you. That brings us to the main motion as amended. I have a motion put forth by Councillor Olson that the agenda for the July 12th, 2023 public meeting under the Planning Act special meeting of Committee of the Whole be adopted as amended. To you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Any further comment on the agenda as amended, or as amended? Any further comments? Not seeing any. All in favor? Any opposed? Madam Clerk, motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, that brings us to item number 4, being disclosure of pecuniary interest. To you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. After viewing the agenda, does any council member have to disclose a pecuniary interest and general nature thereof? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. That brings us to item number 5, and I will now read the opening remarks into the record. Town of Pelham application for official plan and zoning bylaw amendment, 550 Weber Road, file number OPAM-01-2023 and AM-04-2023, official plan and zoning bylaw amendments to permit a place of worship on the subject property. The Planning Act requires under Section 26 and 34 that council must hold at least one public meeting for informing the public in respect to the proposed official plan and zoning bylaw amendments. The public meeting has been called to satisfy this request. Notice of this meeting was provided by prepaid prepaid first-class mail to all persons who are listed as owners in the last revised assessment roll within 120 meters of the subject property on June 16, 2023. The notice provided information on the property and the proposed official plan and zoning bylaw amendments. In addition to providing information, we will also receive any comments which any member of the public may wish to offer. If you wish to receive a copy of the notice of decision, please contact the clerk and/or planner in writing as soon as possible. Contact information is also available on the town's website and will be displayed on the last slide of the staff presentation to follow shortly. If a person or public body would otherwise have an ability to appeal the decision of the Town of Pelham to the Ontario Land Tribunal, but they do not make oral submissions at the public meeting or make written submissions to the Town of Pelham before the bylaw is passed, they're not entitled to appeal the decision. In closing, we stress that at this point, no decision has been made on the proposed amendments, and therefore, any comments received will be considered by council. Through Mr. Mayor, we do have our senior planner with us this evening, Shannon Larocque.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Larocque, you have the floor.
The public. This public meeting is for property located at 550 Weber Road, and the applications under consideration are for an official plan and a zoning bylaw amendment. This property is located on the south side of Weber Road, east of Cream Street, and this property was previously used as the construction office and contractor's yard for Tucker Homes, as well as an accessory dwelling unit. This property also contains a provincially significant wetland and a woodland, and it's now been purchased by the Welland Brethren in Christchurch, and the hope is that they can relocate their church to this property. The application for official plan amendment would allow a place of worship as a permitted use in the good general agricultural designation, and the application for zoning bylaw amendment would rezone the lands to a site-specific rural employment zone, a rural employment 72 zone, which is the current zone, as well as the environmental protection 1 zone. This is the proposed site plan showing how the church would like to use this property. As noted, they would like to come to this site and reuse the existing, I'm not sure if my mouse works on here, but the worship center auditorium would be located in the existing one-story building. That's the building to the east, the furthest east on this property. They would also like to reuse the existing two-story building, which is the most westerly building. That building, the ground floor would be used for Sunday school, child minding, and youth group. And the second story would be used for offices and podcasts. There's also a desire to do an addition between those two buildings and join them together. That addition would be used for a cafeteria, open hallway, and washrooms. The proposal would also include an expanded parking area to accommodate the congregates, as well as a new septic system. The parking area would contain 54 parking spaces, including 2 barrier-free spaces. And the wetland and woodland are not proposed to be developed. In fact, there will be some restoration of the wetland and planting of the buffer around those features, as that would be a requirement of a future site plan application if these current applications receive approval. The planning framework, the policy framework for these applications include being within the prime agricultural area in the provincial policy statement, as well as the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe. And the Niagara Region's official plan designates this property as being within the prime agricultural area with a natural environment system overlay. This designation allows the continued operation of legally established uses, which include commercial uses and employment uses, such as the Tucker Homes construction operation. And the policies also allow the conversion or redevelopment of those uses that bring the property more into conformity with the plan and subject to certain policy considerations. Those policy considerations include that no new municipal services are required, that the proposal does not expand into key natural heritage features or key hydrologic features, that the completion of an agricultural impact assessment is undertaken, that there's no intrusion of incompatible uses into these areas, and that the use complies with the minimum distance separation formula from any adjacent livestock operations. The Town of Pelham's official plan designates this property as Good General Agricultural, Environmental Protection 1, and Environmental Protection 2. When non-agricultural uses are proposed within the Good General Agricultural designation, those applications are also supposed to be considered in light of certain policies. Those policies include that there are no reasonable alternatives to accommodate that use within urban or rural areas, that the non-agricultural use is compatible with and won't impact the normal operation of surrounding farm operations, that the natural heritage policies are conformed to, and that suitable private water supply and private sewage systems are able to be accommodated. As noted, the environmentally designated areas on this property are not proposed to be developed as part of the application. And the town zoning bylaw currently zones the property rural employment 72 and environmental protection 1. The rural employment 72 zone permits a dwelling unit inside the existing building as an accessory use to a use in the rural employment zone. And the requested zoning change would change it to a site-specific rural employment zone that would permit the place of worship on that front portion of the property. The wish is to retain the rural employment 72 zone on a small portion in the back, and to retain the environmental protection 1 zone in the location of the woodland and wetland and the buffer. And the site-specific requests with this zoning include a reduction to the number of barrier-free parking spaces. The requirement is for 3 spaces in our zoning bylaw, 1 type A and 2 type B. And the request is to provide 2 spaces, 1 type A and 1 type B. There is also a request to not provide bicycle parking spaces. The town zoning bylaw requires 13 short-term spaces at this time. Those are outdoor spaces, such as a bicycle rack, and 1 long-term space, which is an indoor space. There is a further reduction being requested to the width of the parking spaces in the parking lot. The standard requirement in the zoning bylaw is 2.6 meters in width, and the request is to reduce that to 2.4 meters. And finally, to locate the parking area 0.7 meters from the north lot line, where the zoning requires 0.9 meters. These applications were circulated for comments to both town departments and commenting agencies. The Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority advised that they have no objections to the approval of these applications. They did indicate that they would have further review for a future site plan approval application. That review would include the restoration of the wetland and the buffers. And the Niagara Region Growth Strategy and Economic Development Department support the proposed applications in principle, provided they received a copy of the Stage 2 Environmentalist Site Assessment Report. And they advised that they would require that the appropriate vegetative protection zones are reflected in a future site plan application. So that's those planted buffers that I'm speaking of adjacent to the wetland and the woodland. Town Public Works had no comments or concerns. And we did receive a couple of comments from the public. We received 1 comment from, and obviously I didn't have them at the time I prepared this presentation, so the slide is blank, so I'll be providing those comments verbally. 1 comment was from the Niagara Central Dorothy Rungling Airport. The airport does not object to the applications, however, would like all parties to consider that current and future airport operations could impact the sanctity of church services. And the second comment was from Mo Baudouin. He's a neighboring property owner who advised that he operates a commercial business on his property, which includes heavy machinery and truck traffic, as well as the mixing of topsoil, which will cause odor, dust, and noise impacts. He also expressed concerns that the church use may reduce potential future use of his property or expansion of his business. He also noted concerns about traffic and proper sewage systems. A fair number of technical reports were provided with these applications. They include a planning justification report, a stormwater management brief, a site servicing and grading plan, a scoped agricultural impact assessment, an environmental impact study, phase 1 and 2 environmental site assessments, a private on-site wastewater servicing report, and stage 1-2 archaeological assessment. Anyone wishing to view these reports can access them on the town's website in full through the link at the bottom of the slide. And as noted, there are no decisions or recommendations being made regarding these applications tonight. Town planning staff will take all comments received and go and consider them and provide a recommendation to council at a later date through a recommendation report. If anyone wishes to provide their contact information to me so that they can receive notices or ask questions or receive further information regarding these applications, please contact me by telephone at the town, 905-980-6661, or by email, slarock@pelham.ca. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much, Ms. Luak, for the planning presentation. I turn to the clerk.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would now invite the agents from NPG Planning Solution to the podium for their presentation.
Okay, thank you. And you have the floor.
Sorry, just start a screen share before I start speaking. Okay. All right. Well, good evening, Mr. Mayor, councilors, and everyone present here. My name is Ria Davis. I'm an intermediate planner at NPG Planning Solutions, and I'm here with our founding partner, John Hendricks, our clients, Mr. Douglas Sider and Pastor Andrew Stolp, representing Welland BIC Church. We also have our septic designer, Mr. Trevor Imhoff, tuning in through Zoom. We are here to provide more information on the proposed official plan and zoning bylaw amendment application, and are happy to answer any questions you may have at the end of our presentation. I'll skip the slide as Ms. LaRock already touched upon most of the items. I just want to highlight that our site here is surrounded by agricultural lands and environmentally sensitive lands, as you can see on this slide. And I'll touch upon how we plan to implement the proposal being sensitive to the surrounding users. So zooming in on our site itself, this is an aerial image showing the limit of the designated natural heritage features just south of the currently developed portion on the site. An environmental impact study was completed confirming the presence of provincially significant wetland and significant woodland. And this portion of the property accounts for 3.2 hectares of our site, where our site is 4.04 hectares. You can see majority of this portion, the southern portion of the lands, are environmentally designated. But the focus of our application is on the northern portion, where development already exists. And I wanted to draw your attention to that. As Ms. LaRock mentioned, there are 2 single-story buildings existing on this portion, and it's currently being used for commercial and industrial purposes. We conducted an agricultural impact assessment that confirms that these lands have never been used for agricultural production and are in no condition to be used for it. You'll also see an area highlighted on the screen showing an intrusion within the mapped limit of this provincially significant wetland, and this is an existing condition. I'll come back to that as we talk about our proposed development, which is what is shown on this slide. The net developable area, because of the existing environmental features, if you minus those portions, just the northern portion where development is permitted is only 6,500 square meters. Our intention, again, as Ms. LaRocque mentioned, is to repurpose the existing two buildings to establish a place of worship, and then we're proposing an addition linking the two buildings to provide other church-related uses. The church space and its supporting services are designed to use for a total of 185 people. This next slide, we have taken special measures to ensure preservation and restoration of the existing natural heritage features, and I would like to highlight some of our key elements. Starting with the parking area, you will see that there are two parking areas, and we've consciously designed them such that majority of the parking is provided on the north side of the building, away from the environmentally sensitive lands. We will be including a variable buffer from the PSW boundary where natural restoration is proposed, and we are also proposing a naturalized bioswale planted with native vegetation to further contribute to restoration. The next layer you can see is the amenity areas that will provide further buffering from the parking area. It will be maintained as a turf grass. The last thing we'll be proposing would be the replacement of the septic system itself. That will be designed to increase protection of the groundwater and the PSW feature. I'd like to show those in the next few slides as to how we plan to implement them. So this is the proposed development. I'm going to highlight the existing extent of the leaching bed, which is currently serving or was placed to serve the commercial and the industrial uses up until now. And with our replacement septic bed, it's being expanded northward in efforts to be away from the environmentally sensitive lands. You'll note that the existing leaching bed is currently intruding into the natural area. So that is being rectified through our proposed development. You can see that this replacement septic bed is completely outside of our PSW limit. I also wanted to touch upon the vegetative protection zone that we are proposing. It has a variable width of 1.5 meters, 3.3 meters, and 3.7 meters across at the pinch points, and it is considerably larger at all other areas along that provincially significant boundary. So that in connection to this existing wetland limit, you can see the amount of restoration and area that we are allocating for preservation of the natural heritage system on the site. Just to reiterate some of the points that we have talked so far, this development is an improvement from the existing condition. It's less intrusive than the existing operation and is more sensitive to the surrounding rural area. This proposal is entirely within the developable limits and does not expand towards the PSW. Our aim is to go away from the PSW. It eliminates the intrusion that is currently taking place due to the former uses and aims to restore the historical extents of the PSW boundary. This next slide shows what we are proposing as part of our official plan amendment. And again, I will skip this because Ms. LaRocque went into detail. And I'll go on to the next one, which is our proposed zoning bylaw amendment. Again, I won't go into the details of all the requests that we are seeking for. Just wanted to highlight a few things over here. The one with regards to the reduced number of barrier-free spaces and the accessible spaces. Both of these, our site plan was prepared when the old zoning bylaw was in place. So this request is occurring essentially due to the timing of our submission. Similarly, with regards to the bike parking spaces as well, it wasn't required under the previous bylaw, which is why you don't see that shown on our site plan. But it's certainly something that we can work with the staff on. Lastly, with regards to the reduction in the 0.7 meter between the parking area and street line, we think this proposed setback is minor and supportable. And this slide again shows the schedule that we are proposing with the zoning bylaw amendment application. Just want to highlight here the southern portion of the property. We are not touching that piece of land, and we are recommending that it remains as is. All of the development is focused on the northern portion, which is colored in yellow, and we are requesting for that site-specific on that yellow portion. So our recommendation here is to keep the orange portion as is. The next few slides talk about the studies that we have completed as part of our project, and I wanted to briefly touch upon each of them. The requested stormwater design brief and replacement septic system confirms that the proposal can improve the condition from what is currently existing. There are no archaeological resources documented through the stage 1 and 2 assessments. Then we completed an agricultural impact assessment, as I previously mentioned, and it again confirms that there is no that these lands are not viable for agricultural use, and that the proposal is not anticipated to impact surrounding agricultural operations. Regional staff have reviewed and have no objection to the conclusions of this report. We also completed a phase 1 and 2 environmental site assessment, and that also confirms that there is no further evaluation required. Lastly, we completed an environmental impact study, which confirmed the presence of natural heritage features, and then it supports the restoration of the historical extents of the PSW, as we just walked you through. So this application has no negative impacts on the environmental features and their functions. If anything, they're positive. So in conclusion, our proposal is supported by the provincial policy statement, the growth plan, Niagara regional plan, and the town of Pelham official plan. The subject lands are not viable for agricultural use, as I previously mentioned, and no lands are being taken out of agricultural use or farm operations from this area. And there is no direct negative impacts on the natural agricultural system anticipated because of the proposed development. The proposal is less intrusive in comparison to the existing uses and establishes compatibility with the existing surrounding uses. The new septic system, again, is proposed to improve the existing condition with no negative impact on the natural features and their ecological functions. The proposed development can be serviced in accordance to the town, region, and NPCA requirements. And all of this is supported by the professional studies that I just walked you through as well. This ends my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much for that presentation, Ms. Davis, and very informative. Thank you. I turn to the clerk.
Through Mr. Mayor, we do not have any pre-registered members of the public. However, if anyone in the gallery wishes to make any verbal comments, I would ask that you please make your way to the center podium, turn on the microphone, and state your name for the record before proceeding.
Okay, thank you. So now I open it up to questions from the committee. Does any councillor have questions on the presentation?
Sorry, through Mr. Mayor, before we move to the committee, if we could just close out the public portion.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
So I have to, before I continue, I was swimming today, and I have, my head is full of water. So I have swimmer's ear. So I apologize
No
for this.
problem.
So we have,
Yeah, I would just
repeat
call.
the instructions.
Yeah, I would just call once more from the public. Is anyone wishing to speak? Okay, seeing none, I'll just confirm that we've received no emails. Just a moment.
Okay, thank you. I apologize for that,
No
everyone.
problem.
So now we want to open the questions of the presentation. Anyone from council? And I see Councilor Wink.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the planners. Congregation of 136 people, I would think that there's quite a few elderly people and whatever. Can you please provide the rationale of reducing the 3 barrier-free parking spaces down to 2?
Yeah, for sure. So like through you, Mr. Chair, like I mentioned, the plan when we prepared it was under the old zoning bylaw, and it complied to the old zoning bylaw requiring 2 spaces. Given that now we are under the new zoning bylaw, just due to the timing of the submission, this variance was something that had to be requested. But we can certainly work with staff to take a look at that again and provide an additional space if needed.
Thank you. Just because you were preparing it at one point and now we're at a different stage. The zoning bylaw has been passed for well over 6 months now. And, I think barrier-free parking spaces are very important for the public and particularly for a congregation. So I would like to see it reconsidered. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Wink. Any other comments at this time? I see Councilor Eckert.
First of all, I want to apologize. I saw you in front of Town Hall, obviously at the wrong place. I should have offered you a ride over here. So,
That's okay.
just a quick question on the concern from the airport. They're indicating that the present and future use could cause some sort of a disruption of service. And I don't think I can ask you for a guarantee that this won't happen, but do you foresee any problems in the future that if the airport did future use cause more landings and takeoffs, I'd hate to see the congregation back here demanding that we shut the airport down. So,
To the presenter.
Through you, Chair. We've been made aware of the airport's concerns through this process, and we've had a chance to talk to our clients as well about that. So we have been notified, we are aware of it. With regards to whether noise will impact or not, of course, I can't say, but I think, again, that requires some sort of working with the staff to ensure that there are appropriate clauses in place, just so it's something that, we can fall back on in the future.
Thank you, Chair. Can I?
Sorry, yeah.
Thank you, Councilor. Yes, go ahead.
I'm with NPG, and I want to clarify.
Yeah.
There are no concerns from our client with regard to the airport. So that's really getting to the heart, I hope, of the question. Can I also just add a personal observation, not a professional one, so I'll clarify that mostly for these two. I live in Virgil. We live in the flight path for Niagara District. I can only speak personally, but we're happy to have the airport there. We know the value of we appreciate the value of the airport, certainly in the south as well. We understand why that airport's important to this community. And so maybe I'm edging into professional opinion here, but I think that the airports are both important to the region. And I understand from the church representatives that they appreciate that too. So just to fill that out, I know it's less professional planning opinion, but I think it's important for you to hear that.
Okay, thank you for that.
thank you, Mr. Mayor, that's all.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any other questions? And I see Councillor Nesnick.
Hi, good evening. How are you tonight? Thank you for your presentations, both of you. Just a quick question with regards to water services. So is that property serviced by town water, or is that purchased water that they have just don't know?
I believe it's not on, you're not on town water, no.
No.
So it's cisterns.
No, so purchasing, you'll have to have a water. So in your plans, I just didn't see anything there for expanding upon that. Is that somewhere in the works?
Yeah, no, absolutely, that's fair. So currently on the site, we do have portable water tanks located. We were not asked to specifically review it as part of the application, but we have some tanks existing within the property which would be utilized by the church services.
Any further comments, Ms. Ness?
Well, no, but just you'll want to make sure that you have sufficient water access for 150 people on
Yeah, no, I'm sure that's something that would be reviewed as part of.
and through the week, because we used to be used as a business which probably had maybe 10 employees using the water there. So that will certainly have to be considered when you do your renovations and that sort of thing.
Fair point.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. There's
Okay.
a fellow with a hand up.
Okay, thank you. Sir?
Doug Sider, thank you. Let me just clarify two things. One, there is a drilled well currently that is undrinkable. It's I forget the phrase, unpotable. And so that is used for gray water primarily in the workshop facility and as part of the in-floor heating system that is currently in what is currently a workshop. On the residence office side, there is a cistern that was used 24/7. I believe it comes into the roof, and then they also truck it in. And that has provided the water for the house, the residence, and the offices to date. And so how those would both interplay, I think, is an issue down the road. But those are the two systems that are present and that are being utilized effectively currently. Does that clarify?
Councillor?
Well, yes, thank you very much. But I just want to make sure that there's capacity of potable water available for, the church goers moving forward. And I guess my other question then through you, Mr. Mayor, is there planned residents going to be living on there, or will be just used strictly as offices and then recreational and church services?
Yeah, so obviously there will have to be enough potable water. That's just a given.
Yeah.
To the second, no, there will not be a residence. That was a historic use, and as a part of when it was purchased, that's what was being done. Ours is strictly as described, main floor kind of ministry, children, whatever, and second floor offices and podcast space, that kind of thing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any other questions? Oh, go ahead, Councillor Nesnick.
Sorry, just one more. Just with regards to the setback from the north property, it's 0.79 you're asking for, and the new bylaw is 0.9. Is there any reason why you couldn't back it up and actually meet that 0.9 suggestion? It would take about a foot off of probably your front yard. Like, you've got space there, you've got about 20 feet, 18 feet from what I see in the plan.
From what I understand, I think, so we're trying to meet the parking length requirements as well. So I think that is what is constraining us from reducing the space to provide that setback on the north property line.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Just something to consider. It's not a lot of space. I know,
Yeah.
what is that, 2 feet, 3 feet? Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Nesnick. Any other questions, either to the presenter or to planning staff? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk. Again, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if there's no more comments from council, we'll move to the presentation of resolutions. I have a motion put forth by Councillor Niznik that committee receive report 2023-146 for information as it pertains to file numbers OPAM-01-2023 and AM-04 2023, and that committee direct planning staff to prepare the recommendation report on this topic for council's consideration. To you, Mr. Mayor. To you for the vote.
To the vote, all those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Thank you, Madam Clerk. The motion carries.
Thank you. And that brings us to a motion put forth by Councillor Wink that committee receive the applicant's presentation for information. To you, Mr. Mayor, for the vote.
Okay, on the vote, all those in favor? All those opposed? Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you. I have a motion put forth by Councillor Hildebrand that committee receive the written correspondence as listed on the agenda. To you, Mr. Mayor, for the vote.
Okay, again, all those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. That brings us to adjournment, and I have a motion put forth by Councillor Eckert that this special committee of the whole public meeting under the Planning Act be adjourned. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any, I will call the vote. All those in favor? All those against? Motion carries. This meeting is adjourned. And please get my hearing back.